What you see here is the most well-known, the most commonly taught, and most written about survival shelter in history. This is the debris shelter. Shelter building is one of the foundational outdoor survival skills. And once you've spent the night in a storm in one of these and stayed warm and stayed dry, you'll see exactly what I mean. Remember, exposure is one of the #1 killers in outdoor survival situations. So if you want to become competent in outdoor survival, you must become competent in shelter building. So it's important to be able to quickly assess the area that you're stuck in for threats to make sure it's safe for a shelter build. Don't forget to look up, okay? In any forest, we have to watch out for standing dead trees. That's what we call snags, just waiting for a high gust of wind to fall over. Remember, trees die from the top down, so it may look green on the bottom, but on the top you have a dead spire like that could come down in heavy winds with a lot of sway. So we want to avoid being directly under something like that. And now watch for any hung up branches under the trees. Now, these trees provide shelter, of course, but they can also be a hazard. So look up. When we're building survival shelters in the forest, the name of the game, whenever possible, is to use the dead and down. And this is not just about conservation. This is about speed and effort. It's always easiest, it's always fastest to gather our materials from the forest floor. The other option is cutting. And when you see the amount of poles and covering you need to make a shelter fully weatherproof in a life-threatening storm out here, you'll see you don't want to spend all day cutting, hacking, and sawing this material. This is one benefit most forests offer. In the boreal forest, you may have large areas with birch leaves covering the ground along the creeks. On the East Coast, we have all our maple and other leaves that find their way to the forest floor. Out west, we have all of these pine needles, and indeed on the East Coast as well. As always, we will need ground insulation. So we're going to have to build a brush bed. Whatever we're using for our shelter cover, we will use for our brush bed. Sleeping on the ground in the cold is a severe hypothermia risk. So we need a little bit of ground insulation. So the brush bed isn't really for comfort so much as protection. When building a debris shelter using dead and down, we're getting the shelter covering and bedding, our ground insulation, from the forest floor. And it's really easy, whether you're in a place like this with pine needles or someplace with leaves, to just walk in a circle like this where you see a good concentration of it. Just scooch it all together here. Look at this huge pile I'm getting just while talking to you. No problem at all. Now, we don't need trash bags or large tarps for this. It's all over the forest floor. When you're off trail, it's just not an issue. And here we have barely a minute's work. And that's what we like about debris shelters, about dead and down, is the speed. And here we go, a 2-minute brush bed, if that. Now, we just need enough material to not be able to feel the cold ground. However, if you have enough material to sink in a bit, it's going to be a lot more warm. You know, I can't begin to tell you how comfortable a good brush bed is. You think these pine needles are going to be, poking you or anything like that, but not so, at least not in these jeans and this top. Now, as a survival instructor, I have to say, a lot of new students who have never done this before, they get a little weirded out. They're like, are there going to be bugs in there? What have you? Who cares? Just go for it. It's comfortable. And hey, if you are lost in the woods after a long, hard night of building survival shelters and what have you, this is going to treat you really well. And it's not only comfortable, of course, this is designed to save your life. Laying on the cold ground, that heat transfer, that's a great way to succumb to hypothermia in the wilderness. Our most important materials are our tripod materials, of course. These have to be the strongest. Look, realistically, in an outdoor emergency, you can't afford to be too selective. You just need to quickly harvest materials, find materials that meet the minimal requirements to do the job. Emphasis on to do the job. So if we're going to be selective at all, it'll just be for these 3 poles. In a forest filled with dead and down, then this is no issue. And really in just about any forest at all, we should be able to find 3 strong branches. Now for lashing the bipod together. When I say lashing, I mean binding two objects together with cordage. Now I'm going to show you the most simple form of lashing there is, a basic wrap and frap. Now, in an emergency, we want to keep these knots simple. If I teach you this overly complicated knot, though it may be a good quality, really strong knot, it may be hard to remember, especially in an emergency. And then you try and improvise something, maybe it holds, maybe it doesn't. And that's why we have to keep it simple. If you can tie your shoelaces, you can wrap and frap like this. So this is the wrap and frap. The wrap goes around both objects, and the frap will only go around the cordage in the middle. Allow me to demonstrate. So I'm going to go around my beams, and I'm only going to use a couple of small pieces of cordage here. In this case, it's 550 cord, but it could be your shoelaces, the string from a hoodie or a backpack. We're going to keep it really simple. And if you assemble a tripod properly, it will hold weight really well. And this one wrap, one frap may be all you need. So now I'm going to tie a bit of a square knot. Watch this. Right over left. Pull hard. Left over right, just like tying a knot in your shoelaces. Now always give it one more. There's an old saying, 3 half hitches will hold the world. Some sailors say 3 half hitches will hold the devil. So P-cord may or may not hold knots very well, okay? So giving it that third overhand knot, if you will, that third half hitch will help lock this down and not come undone, especially if you didn't quite get that square knot. You tied what we call a granny knot. You did right over left, whatever. This will help lock it down. And I've been teaching this for years. This always holds. And now for the frap. And the frap just cinches this wrap down tighter than we could ever wrap it. The hardest part is working it through there. Now watch this. See how that tightens that wrap down. So we're going to pull that as hard as we can, wrap that as many times as we can, at least up to 5 times. After 5 times, there's no real advantage to the friction and strength gained. So we'll wrap up to 5 times. That's for the wrap and the frap. And in an emergency, a one solid wrap and frap will treat you really, really well. So I'll just do the same square knot. Give it one more overhand. Here is our wrap, and here is our frap. I hope you're seeing the picture here. You see the frap only goes around the wrap here, and it cinches it down tighter than we can ever wrap it, which is important if we're using minimal cordage. Now, if you're building this for a fun bushcraft project or to keep on your ranch or your camp, then 3 to 5 wraps, 3 to 5 fraps are more suitable for a more permanent structure. In a hurry, this wrap and frap will do just fine. Okay, here's my mise en place. You chefs know what that means. I have everything set up for phase 1, bed and tripod. So I tied my bipod a little high here because I'm doing a demonstration shelter. I want it to look good for YouTube, and so you guys can see the point. I can exaggerate the features so it's easy to follow. Now, the larger I make it, the more materials I need, and that can hinder me in an emergency. So if you're making this to save yourself from exposure, no bigger than your belly button for the crux here, for this tie. That'll let you get inside, hold your body heat, the minimal amount that will still keep you protected. So what I'm going to do here is just cross these wide enough by the brush bed to be able to easily crawl inside. So I know I can get in and out of the shelter. And now, since I have my pole ready, and I can get it perfect afterward, I'll just set it up right here, lean it back just a little bit, and bang, we have our tripod. Now I'll sight it and adjust. Here is the tripod centered above the bed. We want the bipod here, these poles, to be on a 45-degree angle or more steep. These are going to determine the angle of the walls, and we want them to shed snow and water. So we have this ridge pole here right over the brush bed. Now I know I can fit inside. Now I just build the sidewalls, easy peasy. Now what you need to know is you don't have to tie this third pole down. If you have all the cordage in the world, you could do an official tripod lash. That's no big deal. But when we build the sidewalls the weight of those is going to hold this pole down. And believe me, I'm going to walk on the top of this after it's done so you can see what I'm saying. Now be sure your bipod is leaning slightly inward toward the ridge pole here, okay? It has to be going a little bit inward. You don't want it straight up and down or a little forward, because then the whole shelter can rock forward when it's weighted. And yeah, that's the last thing we want, isn't it? Remember, a tripod becomes more stable the more weight you put on it. So if you build this properly, it's going to hold. It's another reason why it's so popular as a survival shelter. Easy to build, really strong, unlikely to collapse. Now to build my sidewalls, I'll go get some poles. Again, we're using dead and down. You don't have to be too picky. The weight of the wall is going to be pretty evenly distributed between these, so no one piece has to hold the whole wall. Just make sure it's not too rotten, not too crooked. Now I just pass one end of the loop through the other. And if you haven't noticed by now, we're using very few tools. So if these side branches are too much of an issue, they're going to be poking into your shelter. It's really easy to set it up. Just baton it off. Hit it right where it joins the branch. And you could pop it all right off. No need to cut or saw or anything like that. Now I'm going to go ahead and space these about 18 to 24 inches apart. I'm going to be adding a lot of other branches here on the sides to hold the thatching. So this spacing is fine. These do not have to be butted together for strength. You're going to save time with this spacing, and you're not going to sacrifice strength. This is going to hold as long as you need it to for outdoor survival. Here we are with our side bars installed. Maybe about a dozen branches and some pine needles so far, a little bit of cordage. This could be done very quickly. So now I'm going to add a lot of small forked branches along the side to hold my thatching on, so the pine needles don't just fall through, right? And then my walls will be done. So I'm just going to start arranging this however it stays on. Okay. Just don't want too much poking inside. And pine needles stay together pretty good. You'll see when I pick up those big bundles, they hold together pretty good. So I'll need less of this. The more whatever you're using falls apart, the more of this you'll need. Okay, and here we are. Look at that hodgepodge of branches. Some short, some long. Just grabbing whatever we need to get the job done. Now I'm going to apply my bundles of debris one row at a time, like shingles on a roof. I'm going to go across the whole bottom, and then I'm going to overlap by a good margin, somewhere around 30% or so. This is going to make sure it sheds rain and snow more effectively. Now we'll know our shelter is rain and snowproof when it's light proof, when I can look through from the inside, not from the outside, from the inside, and see no light shining through, be it a flashlight or whatever. Then I know that the rain and the snow aren't going to get through my thatching. It's not how thick it is, it's whether it's light proof or not. When we apply it systematically and efficiently like this, we use less materials and get it done more quickly. Okay, the first row is done. I'm going to overlap with my second row of thatching shingles here. And note that I don't fan this out, I don't spread it out. Okay, I want to keep this tight and compact to repel the rainfall or snowfall. All right, we're getting close and just in time. And here we are, just in the nick of time. I told you these could be made quickly. Even this colossal, king-sized, oversized A-frame tripod debris shelter. Now remember, to be sure it's light proof, we have to look up at the ridge pole. Don't forget to look up all around the sides and make sure we don't see any light. Once we don't see light, we know we can make it through the storm. Now, there is one last step that we have to do. These pine needles are going to hold together pretty good. They don't blow off easy. But if we were expecting really high-speed winds, we need to do something to hold them down. So I'm going to have to add a few pulls to the outside. And this is exactly what I mean. Because these layers are overlapped, the thatching layers are overlapped, you just need a few branches like this over top to hold it on. and that wind is not going to blow it off. This is especially useful if you're using leaves, grass, or ferns, stuff that really catches the wind. And here's our colossal, oversized A-frame tripod debris shelter, just in time for night. And you could see the light change as I was building it. So you know we got this giant shelter done pretty quickly. And that speed, and you see we used no tools, just some basic cordage. That's what makes it a good survival shelter. Imagine if I just made this small enough to fit inside and get through a storm. It would have taken me even half the time. So that speed of the build, the lack of a necessity of tools, that's what makes this such a great survival shelter. If you ask me, these things are a work of art. Until next time.